My name is Dolores Hart. I'm 72 years old. On July 4, 2025, I died in my attic in Houston during the Texas floods. For most of my life, I was a librarian surrounded by books that held the world's stories, histories, and dreams. I spent 40 years at the Houston Public Library, helping people find answers in pages worn soft by curious hands. It was quiet work, but it suited me as a woman who loved the stillness of a good book and the chance to guide someone toward a truth they didn't know they were seeking. I've lived alone in my small, tidy home in Houston's 5th Ward since my husband Clarence passed 9 years ago. Our marriage was a good one, built on shared faith and simple joys, Sunday services, evening walks, and long conversations over coffee. We never had children, not for lack of wanting, but life has its own plans. After Clarence died, the house grew quieter, but I filled it with prayer. I'd always been a woman of faith, though not the loud kind. I was what some call an intercessor, someone who prays for others, for the world, for things too big for one heart to hold. Most days, I'd sit by my living room window, Bible open, whispering petitions for my neighbors, my city, and a nation I feared was drifting. My days were simple. I'd wake at dawn, make tea, and read scripture. Psalm 23 was my favorite. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It steadied me, especially in a world that seemed to move too fast, with people glued to screens and chasing things that didn't last. I'd spend mornings tending my small garden roses and lavender mostly, their scent a reminder of God's care in the details. Afternoons were for visiting the community center, where I'd read to children or help seniors with their letters. Evenings, I'd pray again, sometimes singing hymns like Amazing Grace in my creaky voice, the notes carrying me back to my childhood church. But if I'm honest, my faith has grown heavily in recent years. I wasn't angry at God, but I was tired. I saw a world that didn't seem to care about the things I held dear. Young people passed me on the street, eyes on their phones, not noticing the elderly woman with a cane. Churches were emptying, replaced by coffee shops and yoga studios. I'd pray for revival, but sometimes it felt like shouting into the wind. Maybe you know this feeling of the ache of seeing something precious slip away, like sand through your fingers. My neighbors were kind but busy. Mrs. Carter next door would wave as she rushed to work, her kids trailing behind with backpacks bigger than they were. I'd watch them and pray, asking God to keep them safe in a city that felt less safe every year. Houston has changed since I was a girl. The streets were louder, the skies grayer, and the floods came more often. I'd seen hurricanes before Harvey in 2017 nearly took my home, but I always trusted God to see me through. I'd pray, sing, and wait for the waters to recede. My work as a librarian has shaped me. I loved books, not just for their stories, but for what they taught about people. I'd seen generations come through the library, children who grew into parents, students who became teachers. But lately, the library felt different. People came for computers, not books. They'd scroll through websites, not shelves. I didn't judge them, but I missed the days when a child's eyes would light up over a story. I'd pray for them too, asking God to stir their hearts toward wisdom, not just information. I wasn't perfect. I could be stubborn, clinging to my routines like a lifeline. I'd avoid new technology, preferring my old radio to a smartphone. Clarence used to tease me, saying I'd rather write a letter than send a text. And I had my doubts too. I'd lie awake some nights wondering if my prayers made a difference. I'd ask God why the world seemed to forget him, why the wisdom of elders like me was pushed aside for the next shiny thing. But every morning I'd open my Bible again, trusting that God heard me, even if I couldn't see the fruit. In early July 2025, the news warned of another storm. The weatherman called it a once-in-a-generation flood, but I'd heard that before. I prepared as best I could, stocked canned food, filled jugs with water, and moved important things upstairs. My Bible, Clarence's old watch, and our wedding photo went into a plastic box in the attic. I wasn't afraid, not really. I'd lived through storms before, and I trusted God to carry me through this one. The rain started on July 2nd, a steady drumbeat on my roof. By the fourth, it was relentless. Water crept up the streets, swallowing cars and lawns. I watched from my window, praying for the city. "Lord, protect us," I whispered, my voice blending with the rain's rhythm. I thought of Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. I believed it even as the water rose. On the morning of July 4th, the power went out. The street was a river, and water seeped under my door. I grabbed my Bible and climbed the attic stairs, my bad hip aching with each step. The attic was small, with a slanted ceiling and a single window. I set up a chair, opened my Bible, and began to pray. I sang too, "It is well with my soul," my voice shaky but sure. The water kept rising faster than I expected. It pushed through the floorboards below, lapping at the stairs. I wasn't scared, not exactly. I'd faced death before Clarence's passing. My own heart was scared a few years back, but I felt a weight, a sense that this was different. I prayed for my neighbors, for the children at the community center, for a nation I loved but barely recognized. I asked God to raise up new intercessors, people to carry the torch I'd held so long. Maybe you felt this, too longing to leave something good behind, even when you're not sure how. The water reached the attic floor. It was cold, inching up my ankles as I stood to sing. I clutched my Bible, its pages soft from years of turning. I didn't stop praying, didn't stop singing. When peace like a river attendeth my way, the window rattled and the world outside was gray and wild. I thought of Clarence, wondering if I'd see him soon. I thought of the library, the children, the roses in my garden. Then it happened. I felt a strange pressure in my chest, not pain exactly, but a heaviness. My knees buckled and I sank into the chair. The water was at my shins now, cold and unyielding. My vision blurred, like looking through a rainy window. I tried to sing another verse, but my voice faltered. The attic seemed to tilt, and I felt a soft pop inside my head, like a light bulb flickering out. Everything went quiet. No rain, no wind, just stillness. The last thing I remember was the Bible slipping from my hands, falling into the water with a soft splash. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment I died. My body stayed in that attic, surrounded by floodwaters, but something else was happening, something I couldn't have imagined. I was about to meet him, the one I'd prayed to all my life, and he had something to show me, something that would change everything. The water in my attic was cold, creeping up my shins as I sat in that old wooden chair, my Bible slipping from my hands. In the middle of the Texas floods, I died. The moment wasn't loud or dramatic like in the movies. It was quiet, almost gentle. I felt a heaviness in my chest, a soft pop inside my head, and then the world tilted sideways. The sound of the rain, the creak of the house, the hymn I'd been singing, all of it faded into a deep, still silence. My vision blurred like rain streaking down a window, and then everything went black. I don't know how long I was in that darkness, but it wasn't frightening. It was like sinking into a warm, heavy sleep, the kind that wraps you up and holds you close. Then something shifted. I felt light, like a feather lifted by a breeze. I opened my eyes, or at least I thought I did, and I was no longer in the attic. I was above it, floating, looking down at myself. There I was, slumped in the chair, my gray hair damp and clinging to my face, my hands limp in my lap. The water was higher now, lapping at my knees, and my Bible floated nearby, its pages fluttering like a wounded bird. I felt no pain, no fear, just a strange curiosity, like watching a scene from someone else's life. I looked around, and the attic seemed both familiar and distant. The wooden beams, the plastic box with Clarence's watch and our wedding photo, the small window rattling in the storm, it was all there, but it felt unimportant, like a memory already fading. I turned my gaze upward, and a soft light appeared, not blinding, but warm like the glow of a candle in a dark room. It drew me, not with force, but with a gentle pull, like a hand reaching out to guide me home. I didn't resist. I couldn't. It was the most natural thing in the world. As I moved toward the light, I felt myself rising, not just through the roof of my house, but beyond it, through the storm clouds, through the rain that no longer touched me. The world below grew smaller. Houston's flooded streets, the cars half submerged, the lights flickering in the distance. I saw it all, but it didn't weigh on me anymore. The worries I'd carried about the city, the nation, the kids at the community center slipped away like a heavy coat I no longer needed. I felt free, lighter than I'd ever been, and a peace settled over me, deep and unshakable. Maybe you felt a moment like that when the world's noise quiets, and you know everything's going to be okay. The light grew brighter, and I was somewhere else. It wasn't a place I could describe with words, not exactly. It was a garden, but not like any garden I'd ever seen. The grass was soft under my feet, greener than my roses back home, and flowers bloomed in colors I didn't have names for. A stream ran nearby, its water clear and sparkling, singing a soft song as it flowed. The air was warm, not heavy like Houston's summer heat, but comforting, like a blanket warmed by the sun. I looked down at my hands. They were smooth, no arthritis, no veins showing through thin skin. I touched my face and felt no wrinkles, only softness. I was me, but somehow more alive, more real. I walked toward the stream, my steps light and sure, no cane needed. That's when I saw him. A man stood by the water, his back to me at first, dressed in a simple white robe that seemed to glow without being bright. He was tying a small boat to a wooden post, his movements calm and deliberate. My heart knew before my mind caught up. The man turned and my breath, or whatever passed for breath in that place, stopped. It was him, Jesus. His face was kind, with eyes that held a depth I couldn't fathom, like they saw every moment of my life and loved me still. He smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. Dolores, he said, his voice gentle but strong, like the stream's song given words. My faithful watchwoman. I froze. Me? A watchwoman? I'd spent my life praying in my quiet corner, unnoticed by most, but he said it with such certainty, such warmth, that I believed him. Tears welled up, not from sadness, but from a joy so big it hurt. I fell to my knees, not because I had to, but because standing felt wrong in the presence of someone so holy, yet so close. Lord, I whispered, my voice trembling. Is it really you? He stepped closer, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. His touch was warm, solid, real. It is, he said. You've carried my heart in your prayers, Dolores. You've stood in the gap for so many. I couldn't speak. All those years alone in my living room, praying for strangers, for a nation I feared was lost. He'd seen it all, every whispered plea, every hymn sung through tears. I looked into his eyes and I saw love, not just for me, but for everyone I'd ever prayed for. It was overwhelming, like standing under a waterfall of grace. I wanted to stay there forever, to never leave that garden, that moment. He gestured to the stream, and we sat on the grass, the ground soft as a cushion. You've seen the world changing, he said, his voice carrying a weight that made me listen closely. You felt the distance, the forgetfulness. I nodded, thinking of the empty churches, the kids on their phones, the way wisdom seemed to be drowned out by noise. I know, I said, my voice small. I've prayed for them, but it feels like it's not enough. He looked at me, his eyes steady. Your prayers have held more than you know, but there's more I need to show you. I felt a spark of curiosity, mixed with a strange ache. What could he mean? The garden around us seemed to pulse with life, the flowers swaying as if they knew something I didn't. He stood, offering his hand. Come, he said, let me show you what's happening and what must be done. I took his hand, and it was like holding on to a promise. We walked along the stream, and the light grew brighter, the air sweeter. I heard voices faint at first, like a choir singing far away. They weren't words I could make out, but they carried hope, longing, and a call I couldn't ignore. Jesus stopped and pointed to the horizon, where the light seemed to gather into a shape I couldn't yet see. "Dolores," he said, "America is forgetting the wisdom of its elders. The intercessors are fading and the next generation is drifting. But I have not forgotten them, and neither must you." My heart pounded. I thought of my prayers, my years of asking God to wake people up. Was this why I was here? To see something bigger, something that could change everything. "What do you want me to see?" I asked, my voice steady now, eager. He smiled again, but there was a seriousness in his eyes, like a father about to share a hard truth. "I'm going to show you the heart of the nation," he said, "and the flood that's coming is not of water, but of forgetfulness. Unless my people turn back, they'll lose what matters most." I nodded, ready to see, ready to understand. The light on the horizon grew clearer, and I felt a pull, like the moment before a storm breaks. He was about to show me something that would shake me to my core, something that would make my years of prayer feel small in comparison. I held his hand tighter, my heart racing with awe and anticipation, waiting for the revelations to unfold. I stood by the stream in that radiant garden, holding Jesus' hand, my heart pounding with a mix of awe and anticipation. His words echoed in my mind. A flood of forgetfulness was coming, and America was losing the wisdom of its elders. The light on the horizon shimmered, drawing me forward, and Jesus led me toward it. The grass was soft under my feet, the air sweet with the scent of flowers I couldn't name. His presence was steady, like an anchor, but his eyes carried a weight that told me what I was about to see would change everything. "Dolores," he said, his voice calm but urgent, "look and see what my people have forgotten." The light parted like a curtain, and I was no longer in the garden. I stood in a vast space like a city square, but it wasn't made of stone or steel. It was alive, pulsing with colors and sounds, golden light, soft voices, and a warmth that wrapped around me like a hug. Before me, scenes unfolded, vivid and real, as if I could step into them. Jesus stood beside me, guiding me through each one, his words weaving truth into what I saw. The first scene was a small church, not unlike the one I'd attended as a girl. People filled the pews, their heads bowed in prayer, their voices rising in hymns. I saw older women like me, their hands clasped, eyes closed, praying with a fierceness that shook the air. "These are my intercessors," Jesus said. "Their prayers hold back the darkness like pillars under a house." But then the scene shifted. The church was empty, its pews covered in dust, the hymnals untouched. Outside, people hurried past, their faces lit by phone screens, their ears plugged with earbuds. The elders were gone, and no one had taken their place. I felt a pang in my chest, like losing something precious. "The wisdom of the elders is fading," Jesus said. "Yeah, without it, my people are unmoored." I nodded, thinking of my own prayers, how I'd sat by my window, asking God to wake the nation. "Why don't they see?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why don't they listen to us anymore?" He pointed to the next scene. It was a city street crowded with people, their lives tangled in a rush of noise, cars honking, screens flashing advertisements, voices shouting over each other. I saw young people, their eyes tired, chasing success, approval, distraction. They moved like they were running from something, but they didn't know what. Above them, a dark cloud loomed, not of rain, but of something heavier. Confusion, despair, a hunger for meaning they couldn't name. "They're searching," Jesus said, "but they've forgotten where to look. Technology promises answers, but it pulls them further from me." I saw a young woman, no older than 20, scrolling on her phone. Her face was blank, but her eyes were empty, like she was looking for something she'd never find. I wanted to reach out, to tell her to put the phone down, to listen to the quiet voice inside her. Maybe you've seen this too, the way people cling to screens, hoping they'll fill the ache in their hearts. I turned to Jesus. "How do we help them?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he showed me another vision. It was a family at a kitchen table, but they weren't talking. Each one stared at a device: phones, tablets, laptops. The room was silent except for the hum of electronics. I felt a lump in my throat, remembering my own evenings with Clarence, how we'd talk for hours over coffee. "Relationships are my design," Jesus said, "but they're breaking under the weight of distraction. People are together, yet alone." The scene shifted again, and this time it was darker. I saw a future, not far off, where cities gleamed with technology, self-driving cars, screens on every wall, voices in the air giving commands. But the people looked lost, their faces gray, their steps heavy. Churches were museums, and prayer was a forgotten art. I saw a young man, his eyes desperate, typing into a device, asking it for purpose, for love, for hope. The device answered in a cold mechanical voice, offering nothing real. "This is the flood of forgetfulness," Jesus said. "Unless my people turn back, they'll drown in it." My heart ached. I thought of the children at the community center, the ones I'd read to, their bright eyes full of questions. Would they grow up in this world chasing empty promises? "Lord," I said, my voice breaking, "what can I do? I'm just one old woman." He turned to me, his eyes kind but firm. "Dolores, you've been a watchwoman, praying when others wouldn't. I'm sending you back to awaken my people. Tell them to honor their elders, to rebuild the walls of prayer, to pass the torch of faith before it's too late." "Me," I said, my voice small. "I'm nobody special. I'm just a librarian who prays." He smiled, and it was like sunlight breaking through a storm. "You're mine," he said, "and that's enough. Your prayers have held back more than you know, but now you must speak. Tell them what you've seen. Show them what's at stake." He showed me one final vision. It was Houston, but different, alive with hope. I saw people gathered in homes, churches, parks, praying together, young and old. I saw elders teaching the young, not just with words, but with their lives, their faith. I saw the young woman from the earlier scene, her phone set aside, her hands clasped in prayer, her face lit with peace. The dark cloud was gone, replaced by a light that came from within them. "This is what can be," Jesus said, "if they listen, if they remember." Tears streamed down my face. The weight of it all, the loss, the hope, the call was almost too much. I thought of Psalm 78:4, one I'd read many times. "We will not hide them from their children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord." It hit me differently now, like a promise I was meant to keep. I looked at Jesus, his face so real, so human, yet so divine. "I don't want to leave you," I said, my voice shaking. "I want to stay here with you." His hand rested on my shoulder, warm and steady. "You will always be with me," he said, "but your work isn't finished. They need you, Dolores. They need your voice, your prayers, your story." I shook my head, the thought of leaving this place tearing at me. The garden, the stream, his presence was everything I'd ever longed for. "It's so hard," I whispered. "How can I go back to a world that's forgotten you?" He knelt beside me, his eyes meeting mine. "You won't go alone," he said. "I'll be with you, and you'll carry this truth, that I am near, that I see them, that I love them. Tell them to seek me in the quiet moments, to listen for my voice above the noise." I nodded, though my heart still resisted. The visions lingered in my mind, the empty churches, the distracted families, the flood of forgetfulness. But I saw hope too, the prayers, the gatherings, the light returning. I knew what I had to do, even if it scared me. "Okay," I said, my voice steadier now. "I'll go, I'll tell them." He stood, his robe catching the light, and the garden seemed to glow brighter. "There's one more thing you must know," he said, his voice carrying a new weight. You must return to life, Dolores. Your mission is to awaken the nation, to call them back to me before the flood comes. My breath caught. Return? I looked around at the garden, the stream, the colors that felt like home. I didn't want to leave, not yet, but his words were clear and his love was certain. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my purpose settle into me. I was ready, or as ready as I could be. The light around us began to shift, and I knew the moment was coming when I'd have to leave this place, this peace, and go back to a world that needed me. The garden faded, Jesus' voice still echoing in my ears. You must return to life, Dolores. Your mission is to awaken the nation. My heart clung to the warmth of his presence, the vibrant colors of that heavenly place, the peace that had wrapped me like a blanket. But then came a jolt, sharp and cold, like plunging into icy water. I gasped, my chest heaving, and my eyes snapped open. I was back in my attic, the floodwater now up to my waist, my body shivering in the old wooden chair. The air was heavy with the smell of damp wood and rain, and my Bible floated nearby, its pages sodden but intact. I was alive. The shock of it hit me hard. My limbs felt heavy, my head throbbed, and my hip ached worse than ever. I clutched the chair's arms, trying to steady myself as the world spun. The water was colder than I remembered, biting at my skin, and the storm's roar filled the attic again, rain pounding the roof, wind rattling the window. I coughed, water catching in my throat, and realized I must have been underwater before I came back. My heart raced, not with fear but with the weight of what I'd seen, what I'd been told to do. I don't know how long I sat there catching my breath, but soon I heard shouts from below. Anyone up there? A man's voice called. Flashlights cut through the dim attic, and two rescuers in orange vests waded through the water, their boat bobbing outside the window. "Ma'am, we've got you," one said, his face young and worried. They lifted me carefully, my body stiff and weak, and carried me to the boat. I clung to my Bible, its wet weight a reminder of where I'd been. At the hospital, the doctors were stunned. "You're lucky to be alive," one said, checking my chart. "Your heart stopped for at least 10 minutes. We don't know how you made it." I wanted to tell them it wasn't luck. It was Jesus, but I was too weak to speak. They ran tests, hooked me to monitors, and wrapped me in blankets. My body felt like a stranger's, heavy and frail, but my heart was on fire. I'd seen him. I heard his voice. And I had a mission. Recovery was slow. My hip ached constantly, and my lungs burned from the water I'd inhaled. The doctor said I'd have to stay a week, maybe more. Mrs. Carter, my neighbor, visited, her eyes wide with relief. "Dolores, we thought you were gone," she said, squeezing my hand. I smiled, but my mind was elsewhere in the garden, the visions, the flood of forgetfulness Jesus had shown me. I knew I couldn't stay silent. The world needed to hear what I'd seen, and I needed to start right where I was. When I finally went home, the flood had receded, but my house was a mess. The floors were warped, the walls stained, and my garden was a tangle of mud and broken roses. I stood in the doorway, my cane steadying me, and felt a pang of loss. But then I remembered Jesus' words, "You won't go alone." I wasn't the same Dolores who'd climbed those attic stairs. I'd been given a purpose, and I wasn't about to waste it. The first thing I did was change my routine. Before, I'd kept my prayers private, whispered in my living room or sung softly in the attic. Now I knew I had to speak out. I started at the community center, where I'd read to kids before the flood. The next time I went, I didn't bring a storybook. I brought my Bible and my story. "Can I share something?" I asked the coordinator, a young woman named Maria. She nodded, curious, and gathered the kids and a few seniors in the rec room. I stood there, my voice shaky at first, and told them everything. "My name is Dolores, and I died during the flood," I began. The kids' eyes widened, and the seniors leaned forward. I described the attic, the water, the moment my heart stopped. I told them about the garden, the stream, and Jesus calling me his watchwoman. I shared the visions of the empty churches, the distracted families, the coming flood of forgetfulness. Jesus showed me a world that's forgotten its elders, I said, but he also showed me hope. If we pray together, if we listen to each other, we can change it. The room was quiet when I finished, but then a girl, maybe 10, raised her hand. "Did Jesus really talk to you?" she asked. I nodded. He did, and he told me to tell you to seek him, to listen for his voice in the quiet moments. An older man, Mr. Jenkins, wiped his eyes. "I used to pray like that," he said. "Maybe it's time I start again." That day, we prayed together, a small circle of young and old, our voices blending like the choir I'd heard in the garden. From then on, I made it my mission to speak wherever I could. I went to churches, community groups, even the library where I'd worked for 40 years. I told my story, not to preach, but to share what I'd seen. Honor your elders, I'd say. They carry wisdom you can't find on a screen. Pray together, young and old, because that's how we hold back the darkness. I quoted Psalm 78:4, the verse that had taken on new meaning. We will not hide them from their children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord. People listened, some skeptical, some tearful, but all curious. Maybe you know that feeling when a story stirs something deep inside, something you didn't know you were missing. My daily life changed too. I still woke at dawn, made tea, and read my Bible, but now I invited others to join me. Mrs. Carter and her kids came over some mornings and we'd pray in my living room, the same place where I'd prayed alone for years. Her son, Jamal, asked questions about Jesus, and I answered simply like I was talking to a friend. I stopped avoiding technology altogether. I let Maria show me how to record my story on her phone, and she posted it online. "People need to hear this," she said. I wasn't sure about it, but when she told me thousands had watched it, I knew Jesus was using even that to spread his message. My relationships grew deeper. I called old friends, visited neighbors, and listened to their stories, not just shared my own. I realized that's what Jesus meant by rebuilding the walls of prayer, connecting people, not just to God, but to each other. I started a prayer group at the community center, and soon it wasn't just seniors, but teenagers, parents, even a few who'd never set foot in a church. We prayed for the nation, for the young to find purpose, for the old to be heard. It wasn't big or flashy, but it felt like the hope I'd seen in that final vision. The biggest change was in me. Before, I'd carried a heaviness, a fear that my prayers didn't matter. Now I knew they did. I'd seen Jesus, felt his hand on my shoulder, heard him call me his watchwoman. That truth burned in me, brighter than any doubt. I didn't care about being comfortable anymore. I cared about being faithful. I sold my old radio and bought a simple phone, not to scroll, but to stay connected with the people I was called to reach. I hung Clarence's watch on the wall, a reminder that time was short, and I held our wedding photo closer, thanking God for the love that had shaped me. I'm still just Dolores, a 72-year-old retired librarian, but I'm not alone anymore. I carry a message. The nation is forgetting its spiritual roots, but it's not too late. Honor your elders, rebuild prayer, pass the torch of faith. Seek Jesus in the quiet moments when the world's noise fades. He's there, waiting. Maybe you feel it too, the pull to something real, something lasting. I'm here to tell you it's not a dream. It's him, and he's calling you just like he called me to wake up and live for what matters most.